is that darn Cardi Jew? They're making us ravenous look horrible.
If you've enjoyed this program, please click like and subscribe.
Shalom, and welcome again to another exciting edition of the Torah Watchman Show International, hosted by none other, your humble Cardi servant, Reb ben-Emmett. Did I say I'm 501c3? That means tax exempt and approved by the federal government. Whatever touches your heart in a certain way to reach out to very needy, vulnerable Jewish people and B'nai Noach around the world, I'm the trusted resource there for my company. I invested quite a bit of money in setting up my company for this sole purpose. It's going to be used for all things Jewish and Judaism. Religious is in the category of religion and Judaism. In fact, I'm thinking about talking to some other individuals that are responsible for managing a Jewish orchestra. Yes, young people, high schoolers, middle schoolers, and even younger playing the violin, believe it or not, and playing other musical instruments, woodwinds, trumpets, and so on. Well, they need funds for this. The schools cannot be expected to have all the money. These musical instruments are quite expensive. So in other words, when you have a rich philanthropist that wants to donate a tax-exempt stipend or grant like that, it may be up to $5,000, $10,000. Well, this money is tax-exempt. A portion of that comes back to the individual during tax time, and we're getting ready for that in the United States. I don't know about the rest of the world, not germane. But anyway, I'm very excited about this. I even ordered my own Torah Watchman t-shirt. I'm thinking about getting ball caps and everything else. I plan on setting up booths during special times of the year in public areas, maybe going a few trips, talking to investors. I'm not allowed to have any stocks or shares or anything else. The investment is in the kingdom of God. Anyway, I have to do my own commercials, right? This Torah Watchman show is none other than Parshah Terumah. Yes, we're in this another Torah Watchman video about our weekly Torah cycle. Terumah means offering, namely our modim, our Thanksgiving offering, that God expects us to give some sort of a recognition for all the entitlements He's so graciously bestowed upon. And these kind of offerings, give you a synopsis briefly, these offerings are from the goodness of your heart. Hospitality offerings, modim offerings. For instance, you had bumper crops this year. You had your grain silos were overfilling. When you want to give an offering back to the divine Creator that allowed it to rain within season, it kept the pest away and kept the animals away and things of that nature could destroy your harvest before it could be brought to market. So you can put some money and some shekels in your coffers, right? That's what this is about. So understand where we left off last week for proper context. Now, although these Torah sidras are not always chronological and not always procedural, based on my own inspection and research on this can be a part two of what Moshe and Aaron had discussed privately together upon the Mount Sinai. Remember, this was a staged process, okay? There was a makeshift temple, 12 pillars for 12 tribes of Israel was set up, non-hewn stones, natural stones, set up in pillars. A place to put some wood for kindling and fire, and of course kosher animals that would be sacrificed to God in that way. God was teaching the Jewish people. Many of the people there were heathens as far as what it came to orthodoxy and kosher root and all this. They just did not know what to expect. Again, the majority of the Jewish people at that time, they knew that God was something greater than the Egyptian army, because whatever miracles that they could not explain or quantify, by whatever estimation reality that they may have had in their imagination. They saw things they could not explain. And therefore it was a miracle because it was witnessed by tens of thousands, if not millions of people. Not just Jews, but also individuals that were traveling with the Hebrew nation of Israel, that were beholden to all these miracles too. Consider Jethro and the Midianites, his tribe, and they heard about the exploits of Moshe defeating the Pharaoh's army, it was talked about as almost legendary within the Levant. Okay, there is a song of Kaddish that is very almost identical to the song of the sea that Miriam had sung. I've not brought this up previously, but it just occurred to me, it's just historical evidence there, that there were copycats and there was plagiarism, and other people that dealt with the Egyptian army, whether they won or were defeated. The kings have to tell a story to continue their propaganda machine so they can look good among the people, so they can continue having, some authority, and this is very interesting, okay? So you have Moshe, he's on top of Mount Sinai. He's in all that fog, haze, and smoke, with all the fire and lightning surrounding the mountain. Almost a hurricane of cumulonimbus clouds encircling the mountain, tremors and earthquakes and things of that nature. I believe the Elohim had withdrawn quite a bit within the fog itself back to his dimension and realm after the shofar blast was played at the very beginning, when God presented his essence to all the nation of Israel. So what we have now is that the second part of the private conversation that Elohim gave to Moshe, and I believe Aaron was taken with him. He was allowed to come to the middle part of the echelon hierarchical height or ascension of the mountain. Not the highest part where Moshe is now, but last week, or the week before that, Moshe and Aaron received, I would say, a draft Torah. Say oral Torah because it was not completely written down, Moshe hadn't approved yet. But I believe Aaron probably took some copious notes. I believe the information went into the mind and heart and soul of Moshe, and Moshe told Aaron what to write. Maybe even Aaron sketched some pictures out, probably did some schematics, some blueprints and things of this nature. We'll get into this week about the construction of the tabernacle and Mishkan. Don't be misled a little bit about what's happening here. Moshe is indeed on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights. Where's Aaron and the Levites and the judges? Well, they were not allowed to go up to the mountain at this time. So what Aaron and the Levites were doing, and it does not give exact detail, but it says very clearly in the beginning in chapter 25, verse 1. We're going to read to chapter 27, verse 19. For this Parsha that falls on the 8th of Adar 1, yes, and the year of our Lord 5784. To give you some detail there. But we're beginning in chapter 25, and we're going to be talking about Moshe on the mountain. And then the speaking is probably more than likely is Aaron and the Levitical priesthood to the now Jewish people, to the Yehudim, the Nefesh Yehudim. Because after that shofar blast, God had pronounced, "You are my chosen nation, Israel," just as Yaakov, the servant of the Lord, his name was changed to Israel as he matured in his life, in his faith, and walk with God. Okay? So Jehovah commands the Israelites to build a tabernacle, and this is very important to Jehovah God. Remember, the sanctuary would be meaningless if it wasn't for God's benefit, okay? We build things of our hand to be able to glorify God on this earth. Jehovah could not be on that mountain forever. He didn't expect the Jewish people to be anchored to that mountain. And you hear about the term of helicopter parent. Well, Jehovah is not a helicopter parent, even though he's very loving, faithful, Abba, Emma, mother, father to the Jewish people. He wanted to let them go because their freedom of choice and free will was paramount before any kind of offering was given to the Lord. He wanted to know that these people actually loved the Lord their God, not just out of fear of the God of Moses, the mystical God of Moses, because they loved what God did for them. He secured them. He defended them from the Amalekites. He defended them from all the heathen tribal peoples within that area of essentially Saudi Arabia and the Arabias, also providing manna and quail and providing water where there was nothing but dry desert and scorpions and serpents. God had provided for them. And think about all of the harmful elements in the desert. Well, God's cloud shielded them, protected them in their encampments. So in chapter 25, verse 2, God commands Moshe to speak to Israel. And at this time, since Moshe was on the mountain, and the information I'm about to give you was secondhand given to Aaron at that time before it was codified, and essentially 5 Torah scrolls by Moshe. But right now, Moshe was up in a mountain in another dimension of time and space reality. 40 days and 40 nights may have been actually just 4 weeks of his time, but it was definitely 40 days and 40 nights for the Hebrew people on the valley floor there beneath him. Where was Moshe? Maybe he was in the great synagogue of Shamayim. Maybe he was in one of these AMC movies or theaters, whatever, seeing exactly futuristic things of the tabernacle, the Mishkan, how things would be constructed in detail, the various issues that Moshe would face to the Jewish people. Maybe all that information give him the beginnings of the world, Bereshit, things that were handed down through the sages, and Abraham and Noah. All these things were handed down, but all the detail fillers, Elohim provided that to him. And more than likely, he took with him several parchments, of scrolls and things of that nature to write things down. Because he went out there primarily to receive the 2 stone tablets, and we'll get to that shortly. Okay? So it's very important that Elohim made it clear to the Hebrew people, I want to dwell with you forever. I cannot be on this mountain forever. You're a nomadic people, and you need to dwell and you leave this mountain at some point because you're going to the promised land, even though a roundabout scenic way. Who knows? But anyway, for God to be quantum tangled with the Jewish people, to be interacting with the earth-bound plane between Shamayim, the heaven, and the angels and seraphim, and everything else, he had to have something constructed, such as a tabernacle and a Mishkan. And this is where the initial details were first presented in Exodus chapter 25. It's about a generosity and hospitality offering, okay? Christians out there, not every single sacrificial offering is about forgiveness of sin. Sometimes it's just simply about your conjoining soul and spirit with God and showing thanksgiving. This is what hallelujah means, right? It's being thankful. We extend out our arms and hands to the Lord our God, and we say, thank you for giving me the life and breath that I have in my soul. And this is part of my prayer every morning, okay? First, YHWH instructed Moshe to accept contributions from the Levites, through the Israelites. Remember when they left Goshen before the 10th plague was happening? Remember that God had petitioned Moshe to tell the midwives and other Hebrew women to go and knock on the doors of fellow Egyptian neighbors and ask for gold and treasures and things of this nature. So a lot of that gold and everything else eventually would be melted down for fittings, for gold sockets, joints and things of this nature, for the poles, for the tabernacle, even gold necessary for the menorah, the top of the Ark of the Covenant, which is all gold over acacia wood. I'll get to that shortly. That's what Aaron was talking about. He probably had drawings and things. This is what what the God of Moses told me to tell you. He's on the mountain. And I'm sure a lot of people were curious about how long we'd be up there. How could anyone be with God that long and survive? Maybe he would not come down again. Who knows? The whole golden calf thing happened, I think, probably a week, I would say, the last week that Moshe was on the mountain. Okay, for a little detail there. So what God said, let them make me a sanctuary and I will dwell among them. Okay, God had promised that to Moshe, that he would always dwell with his chosen people. Okay, they needed certain materials, precious metals, dyed woods and hides, flax, wood, olive oil, and spices and gems. Where would they get all these things? Well, they brought cart after cart after cart of these resources and materials. Remember, Pharaoh said, take everything you want to with you to get out of Goshen. I don't want anything to do with you. And they had a Pharaoh over the barrel, and they could take anything they wanted because everything was taken away from them in bitter slavery. So some of these things were obtained also from local traders, bartering and things of this nature. Some of these things were just made available by Elohim. So Jehovah gave detailed instruction regarding the construction dimensions of the tabernacle and its vessels, starting with the ark that housed the tablets that were still in construction and development at Shammai. Okay? The ark was to be made, the ark of the testimony, or ark of the covenant, was made of gold-plated acacia wood. I have some wooden bowls that I use for salads and things like that in my kitchen. I love the acacia wood too. Because it makes me think about the temple, and I encourage you to have it in your house. It's very beautiful wood, and it's not too expensive either. But anyway, rings were attached to the corners of the ark, wherein they were inserted poles that were used to transport the ark, because no one could touch the ark physically. You have to touch it indirectly through poles on either side, which you had probably four people, two on each end, transporting the ark of the testimony. Anytime the tabernacle needed to be torn down, it had to be moved. Okay, so this ark of the covenant eventually not only would hold the stone tablets, it would hold eventually Aaron's and staff. It sprouted leaves, bloomed flowers, and eventually bore almonds. It also would have that vase of manna in there too. And this also would be the quantum entanglement of the nefesh of Elohim in the Holy of Holies later on. Chapter 25 again, verse 19, and make one cherub from one end and the other cherub from the other end. What we're talking about is an angel that has multiple faces. Is a guardian angel that's on either side of God's celestial throne. I'm speaking more of Ezekiel's vision, the river Kabar, when he saw a vision of this. So when you said cherub or cherub before, these are not cute little naked babies flying around. These were large angels, angelic creatures that were on either side of God's throne. And again, that's why they were facing one another with their wings touching on top of the Ark of the Covenant. This detail, I think, mirrored aspects of God's throne in Shammai. Okay? Because they were totally alien to the Canaanite people and totally alien to the Hebrew people. And they would have no way of knowing how to create the molds and construction materials for this unless Aaron had written it down or drawn, sketched out some pictures in detail. So don't think that the children of Israel were immediately busy on building that golden calf and all of this that you see in the movies and everything as soon as Moshe went up the mountain. No, at this time, the Levites were preaching to the Hebrew people, sharing with them the draft information that would be codified in five Torah scrolls of Moses that were critical at that time for the Levites to know, because the Levites were the caretakers of God's tabernacle, right? Okay? So in the second aliyah, the ark was to be covered with a slab of pure gold, plate gold over acacia wood. 2 golden winged cherubs were to protrude from the cover. Next, Jehovah gave instructions for constructing the table of the showbread. At a lot of Jewish homes, especially Orthodox homes, you have challah. It's just bread that's braided together, and it's supposed to remind us of the showbread in the old temple, the temple days. Well, the table was to be made of gold-plated acacia wood and also to contain rings or transportation posts, okay? But these things were actually going to be placed inside of the inner sanctum of the Mishkan. Chapter 25, verse 31, I'm just giving you some sample verses from the Sidra. And you shall make a menorah of pure gold. And the menorah shall be made of hammered work. Its base and its stem, its goblets, its knobs, and its flowers shall all be one piece with it. You're talking about something that is ingenious in its construction, and that only the greatest of metallurgists could be able to do this, to create one mold of this without breaking the segments and fusing it and soldering it. However they did this, they had to create one mold of this branch candelabra and do it correctly, okay? And blossoming flowers, because it's indicative of an olive tree that just producing a wonderful virgin olive oil from its fruit. Now, olives are fruit, and just producing it continually like that. They of course have flowers, and that comes olives. I plan on planting an olive tree in my front yard this spring. I'm growing it in my house this winter. Anyway, just picture that. So chapter 26, I want to add this verse because it's special. And the Mishkan you shall make out of 10 curtains consisting of twisted fine linen, blue, purple, and crimson wool. The cherubim design of the work of a master weaver, and you shall make them. So at this time, they were probably selecting the very smartest of the best people there, the most talented people, artisans, metallurgists, carpenters, weavers, seamstress, and other people like that were just very talented in the field of art and innovative designs and things of this nature. Because, Elohim had patented these designs in Shamayim. So in the third aliyah, we're also talking about an animal, a kind of antelope, known as a takash or takasti. It's a antelope we don't know much about, except that it had a beautiful red pelt, beautiful color that was used for the top covering of the tabernacle, the Mishkan. Okay? And this animal evidently served only one purpose before it eventually became extinct. It was to provide the hides for the Lord's sanctuary. I want to emphasize this. God said, build me a sanctuary. Build me an ark of a covenant. Build me a menorah so I can dwell with you. What is God saying to the Jewish people in Israel today when there's 5 mosques on Har HaBayit? There's no intent at all to build another temple anytime soon. We had that one singular choice after we successfully beat the pants off the Arabs in 1967, but the rabbinists said they decided against it because they didn't want to build an imperfect temple because God would just destroy it. Where's their faith? Judah Maccabee had that faith. Where's the faith of Ezra and Nehemiah? I'm sorry, I just had to go down that rabbit hole just a little bit, okay? So in the third aliyah, we're talking about the 7-branch menorah candelabra. I have one in my home. It's a temple menorah, not a Hanukkah menorah, in that it has 12 tribes, the symbol of 12 tribes on each branch. Quite beautiful, comes from Jerusalem, okay? The Torah now turns the attention to the construction of Tabernacle Sanctuary. The covering of the sanctuary was consist of several layers of tapestries. You can imagine that, okay? You've seen in castles and museums beautiful tapestries. Well, this is even more beautiful than that. Very tribal, very gorgeous. I said before I wanted to paint and design my home after the construction materials of the tabernacle. I have a beautiful red wool, a handmade rug on one of my walls with a lion there. I fancy that it's the Lion of Yehuda. And I like these kind of tapestries and things of this nature. And some of them are quite expensive if you buy them. And the wool rugs. Anyway, first layer was to be woven a mixture of dyed wools and linen. The second layer was to be made of goat's hair. Okay. These two oversized coverings also covered the outside of the tabernacle walls. Okay. Everything was sewn, was cut, was shaped precisely against God's specifications, God's patent ideas, and not the ideas even of Moshe and Aaron or even the greatest artisan there. They were the implementers. They were the doers. God was saying, go and do it, essentially. So these two oversized coverings were covered the outsides of the tabernacle walls like drapes. Okay? The very top of the tabernacle was then to be further covered by dyed ram skins and then takash hides again. Okay? And I'll show you a picture right here of what some people believe this animal once looked. Okay? Chapter 26, verse 15, moving into the fourth aliyah, and you shall make the planks of the Mishkan of acacia wood upright. All the wood construction for the tabernacle and the Mishkan, all the skeletal framework was made out of acacia wood, unlike King Solomon's temple that used cedar wood from Lebanon. And that will be in our Haftarah later on. Fourth aliyah, the walls of the tabernacle were to be upright beams made of gold-plated acacia wood, everything gold, just like King Solomon's temple. Some scientists and other people get into why so many gold plating, why is the Ark of the Covenant gold? Maybe that's something to do that gold is extremely electroconductive. It really is. Of some of the best wiring, like for your stereos and things of this nature, use gold plating, like 24 gold plate gold. It's because it conducts electricity. Maybe that's a reason why God asked for this kind of construction, or just other than it, maybe it's just beautiful. Okay? So the bottom of each beam had two projections that were to be inserted into two silver sockets. This whole construction was designed in such a way it could be easily torn down, put into donkey carts and other things like that, and then reassembled at another location. The tabernacle's front side to the east was to have no wall. Its northern and southern side were to have 20 beams each. Okay? Its western wall was to have 8. Altogether, the inside of the sanctuary was 30 cubits. How much is a cubit? That's approximately 45 feet. Okay? So 30 to 45, 50 feet, essentially, that's what that is, by 10 cubits. That's the rectangular design, and 10 cubits high. Okay? Remember, cubit was first introduced in the construction of Noah's Ark. The beams were held together by several crossbars. They didn't have rebar, but that's what they had implemented at that time. Chapter 26, moving to 5th aliyah, verse 31. And you shall have a dividing curtain of blue, purple, and crimson wool. Doesn't that sound gorgeous? Pastel colors, right? And twisted fine linen to work off of a master weaver. He made it into a woven cherubim design. So you actually had angelic embroidery on these curtains. And just imagine how gorgeous that was. It's just incredible. The detail in the Torah is beyond human imagination. It really is. For what would possess anyone out in the desert to create something like this, unless they had some sort of divine input or ideas from something other than what they were raised with, and the full array of their life experience. The sanctuary consists of two sections. The innermost chamber was the Holy of Holies, or known as the Kadosh, the holy, simply holy, where the ark was placed, and the outer chamber was the holy chamber, which is housed the menorah and the table, as well as the golden altar, which would be described in next week's reading in more detail, while Moshe was on the mountain. Okay? 2 curtains were to be woven of dyed wools and linen. Okay? One was to be placed between the Holy Holies and the Holy Chamber. The other covered the eastern side of the tabernacle. It's undrawn. Chapter 27, moving to the 6th aliyah, verse 1, and you shall make the altar of acacia wood. You hear that a lot. 5 cubits long and 5 cubits wide. The altar shall be square, and its height shall be 3 cubits. The detail and the precision of these instruction or direction on how to put this together, doesn't that remind you of the same detail that Elohim gave Noah in the construction of the ark? It was a major building project. This is a major building project right now. And I think at this time they weren't building anything. I think they were maybe doing resource allocation, acquisition, finding out what they had as far as supplies, what they needed to get, and probably pre-selecting the artisans and people that would be responsible for the construction of all these materials. The sixth YHWH gave the instructions for the construction of the outdoor altar. You have the tent of meeting. You have the area that some of the Hebrew people came in and presented offerings before the Levitical priests. You had that big four-horned ascension altar where they had the large bulls and animals there in sacrifice for. There was more in the outer area. And then you had, of course, the altar of incense that was inside of the holy, okay, inside of the Mishkan part. So you had a rectangular tabernacle, and at one end you had the Mishkan where the Holy of Holies was, okay? Now these horns too were not real horns, but they actually were pointed out in the four corners of the world, like a compass or whatever, north, south, east, west. I would imagine that's necessary. And also, there was to help to facilitate the sprinkling of blood from the animal for Terumah, for forgiveness and offerings and gifts to Elohim. Okay? Of course, this altar, everything that was assembled there or would be assembled there would have to have some means of tear down and transportation. So they had these gold rings and these acacia poles, coated with gold too, that were used to transport these artifacts and components and modular components for the tabernacle. Chapter 27, verse 9, and you shall make a courtyard of the Mishkan on the southern side. Then there shall be hangings of the courtyard of twisted fine linen, 100 cubits long on one side. So it's clearly a rectangular geometric shape there. Seventh aliyah, the tabernacle courtyard was to be 100 cubits, that's approximately 150 feet. We said this before, about 50 feet, and enclosed by mesh linen curtains. The entrance of the courtyard was to be on the eastern side, and the entrance was to be covered by a curtain woven of dyed wood, dyed wools, and linen. Okay? A lot of dyeing, a lot of ink, and things of this nature. Where did you get all this material from? Again, most of the material came from Goshen when the Hebrews left there in haste, okay? A lot of those things were being put together, getting ready to be assembled and moved for their quick departure from Goshen, okay? Because a lot of these things did not naturally occur in the desert, and many skeptics say, where did the Jewish people get all these things? Well, they carried most of it from Goshen. The other stuff, other items, they acquired through acquisition of barter and trade with neighboring tribal people, okay? Maybe Jethro even brought some supplies during that time, some offerings for a future tabernacle. Who knows, okay? So in the seventh aliyah, the entrance of the courtyard was to be on the eastern side. The entrance was to be covered by the curtain woven of dyed wool and linen, as I've established. This is the end of this Torah Parsha, okay, Terumah. We have a Haftarah at the end that's very closely parallels the context and the relevance of this Torah Sidra. In the book of Kings, 1 Kings, chapter 5, verse 26, all the way to chapter 6, verse 13. I'm not going to read all of this. There are two key verses I want to bring up here, just for a Torah nugget, right? That's always nice. So verse 12, concerning this house which you are building, this King Solomon, this God speaking to King Solomon, a young man at that time, if you walk in my statutes and execute my ordinances, Boolean logic here, if you do this, I'll do that, and keep all of my commandments to walk with them, then I will establish my word, that's the Torah, with you, be given to you as an inheritance, okay? Which I spoke to David, your father, Okay? Verse 13, and I will dwell among the children of Israel and will not forsake my people Israel. Very clearly here, if you keep the Lord's commandments, if you do everything that God has asked you to do out of the love and hospitality and kindness of your heart, then God will continue tell the entire world, you are my chosen people, and he will never leave you. God has never left the remnant. He didn't leave the remnant in Morocco leading up to the World War II and the Holocaust. That's why the Jews there in Morocco survived, the Jews in Poland perished. Because God was with those that were willing to listen to him and obeying his commandments. Okay? So I hope you enjoyed this Torah Parsha. I hope it was needful. I hope you learned a few things. I always learn something new every time I read. I read from the Torah each and every cyclic month throughout the year. You think that this gets mundane or just ad nauseum, or you get blue in the face. I've heard that again. I don't want to go through all this. It's getting kind of hairy. I don't like all of Leviticus and all the details and stuff. Well, you are a changed individual, good or bad, from this time last year. And that's why this is probably speaking a different message to you. This is evidence, folks, of the divinity of the scriptures. It really is. Because if it touches your heart in a certain way, it doesn't touch everyone the same. It fills that gap. It fills that need in your life. We all have vulnerabilities. We all have discrepancies in our life. We all have shortcomings. Well, the Torah's aim is to heal you from within and out. That's what I like to look at it. That's how I like to look at it. So this is YHWH signing out. Until the next time, remember my motto here. I'm a lighthouse on a hill, will not be hid. I'm not politically correct. I'm that elephant in the room that everyone is talking about, but doesn't want to do anything about, and doesn't want to change their status quo. Consider Benjamin Netanyahu. Okay? Anyway, please share the knowledge of wealth and love and truth for everyone you know. Be that witness unto the world, even though you don't make a lot of friends. My wife and I don't have a lot of really close friends, but the few we have are like family. The reason why that being because we are people of truth, not the world's truth, but the Torah truth. We live our life as humanly possible according to the Torah and the 613 mitzvot. We really do. Well, take care. Shalom Aleichem. Thank you so much for your attention. It means so much to me. God bless you. May the blessings of YHWH, Emmet, be true to you and all of pain.